Mr. Fix-It.
Proudly supported by Aquabion Ireland, the limescale treatment solution. Visit aquabioниreland.ie today.
Have you any funeral arrangements made, like just in case? Because you do sound like you're pretty. You mightn't be knocking at death's door, but you sound like you're kind of tapping at death's door. You should always have everything. Have you made any arrangements? Have you?
Stop,
you should really.
Stop looking so cheerful.
You look wretched. You all right?
Stop. Cancel your party. I sound wretched. I feel fine. In fact, I feel great.
No, you meant to say, I sound wretched. I look wretched. But I feel fine. That's good. Yeah. And hopefully next week you'll just sound fine again. You'll still look wretched.
Can we move on, please?
Go on then.
So the first question is from Aaron in Portarlington. And over the weekend, Aaron did...
By the way, I spoke to somebody lately who was named Aaron because his dad really, really, really genuinely wanted to christen him Elvis. Because he's an Elvis out-and-out fan. And he wanted to christen his Elvis, and his wife wouldn't let him, so they went for Aaron because it's Elvis Aaron Presley.
No way, is it?
Lucky escape, wasn't it?
Mind you. I thought you were going to tell us a story about a sweater. That he was from Galway.
No, that's genuine.
Born on an island.
That's why there was a big to-do between the parents, and they settled on Aaron.
Anyway. Aaron, not Elvis, in Portarlington, says he did an enormous job of cleaning over the weekend, particularly the driveway, and it looks great, and all of the algae and moss is gone.
Great.
What he's not looking forward to is having to do it all over again. So he says once was enough. And is there anything he can put on, a preventative that would stop the algae returning?
So there's two things you can do. I think I'll try and talk as much as I can because it's actually making my eyes water listening to that voice. Well, mine usually does anyway.
Is that my sexy voice? Yes. Barry White, save my life. Barry White.
No, I think it's contagious. Look.
Good, I hope it's fatal.
So if you have a concrete drive, or patio or bricks or any sort of concrete or derivative drive, you can put on a seal, water seal, patio seal. There's 20 different brands out there. They all do more or less the same thing. They make the surface less porous. And if you have a surface that's less porous, the algae doesn't grow as quickly. So in the same way as, if you parked your car outside for a year, the paint on the surface of your car, if you left it there for a year, it might eventually get a bit of a film on it, but not the way the concrete does. So by making it less porous, you make it less likely for algae and moss to grow. That's not to say it'll never grow again. It'll just be much slower and there'll be less of it. The other thing to do is, and that you can't do that with tarmac, that's only for bricks, paving slabs, concrete. The other thing you can do is if at the start of every winter, you spray a light coating of algae moss killer on the drive. So take note of where it was bad. You'll often find the centre. If you have a driveway the width of a car, a bit wider than the width of a car, you'll often find the two edges in the middle that the wheels don't go over get algae. So take note where does it tend to be bad, and spray that in September before it becomes an issue at all, or when you see it beginning at the end of September, when you see it beginning to form, and that'll usually keep it clear for the whole year. And if you're going to remove moss, so it's really important, if you're going to remove moss, do one or two things. Either spray the moss off and kill it and let it be dead before you remove it, or physically scrape off just the worst of it and then spray it off. And then you'll have less of a job in removing the stuff afterwards. But that's really your two solutions. The third solution we always say is move the house to Spain, but that's not really a solution.
Very helpful. Helen wonders, have you heard of the magic chip?
The magic chip? No.
So she has the magic chip in her bathtub. It is the chip that nobody knows how it got there. It just appeared. Hey, presto.
Yeah. Nobody did anything. No one,
So the magic chip is...
So this is a chip on...
her enamel.
Enamel bathtub. Okay, so you can get a little...
Stop picturing her in the bath now.
I'll leave that to you. You can get a little bottle of stuff. It's enamel repair. I don't know, less than a tenner. It looks like a bottle of Tipex because it generally has a little brush in it. And what you do is just, you will have to build up. So enamel can be quite thick, as in enamel can be anything up to 2.5, 3 mil thick. So it depends. You may have to build it up. And remember, the white will never be the same shade of white, but it will still look an awful lot better than it does now with the chip gone. And of course, once the chip is gone, it will get dirty. I would always say give it a good clean and then make sure it's dry. Probably best to clean it with a bit of alcohol, because then it'll dry away straight away. And just build up the coats until it's nice and smooth. And as I say, it won't be the same shade of white, but it'll definitely look better than it does now. And look, somebody dropped something on it and caused a chip, but no one will ever admit to it.
No.
And it could be yourself without realising it. Sometimes you can drop something and the chip only comes away afterwards.
So Kathy has sent a picture of her circular rug.
It's lovely.
And she wants a product that would clean it. And I suppose I'm looking at a glance as you just have. The colours are probably not as vibrant as they originally were.
Yeah, you're not going to bring back the colours. If the colours, to me, the colours look fabulous. I don't know why you're criticising her choice. I'm sure it looks exactly as it did when she bought it.
It probably does. It's just the angle on the screen.
Right. Or your lack of appreciation. So the subtle colours of it, I think, are absolutely fabulous. And there's obviously just a couple of stains on it. I can see a couple of small stains.
I don't see any stains. Where are you seeing stains?
Well, look, just two eyes. Open your eyes.
There are no
two eyes.
stains on
Two
it.
eyes, one mouth. Open your eyes. Have a close look. And
I'm going to come over there and breathe on you now.
So one of the foaming fabric cleaners are great. So the foaming ones, the foam comes out like shaving foam. It means it's not drenching it. Now, it doesn't matter as much with a rug like that because you can move it to where it'll dry. So it's any sort of fabric or carpet cleaner. Rub it in really well, leave it about 20 minutes to work, and then rub it out of it again. And that'll normally do it without a problem. Now, because it's a rug that could be carried outside, if you want to use one of the liquid ones, you can use it. You wouldn't use a liquid one on a carpet if you can avoid it, because the carpet remains wet for so long because it's on the ground, it doesn't dry out well, and then when someone steps on it, it gets twice as dirty. But in the case of a rug like that, you could move it to a spare room and do it in the spare room if you want. But I'd still use the foaming ones because they're so effective at what they do. And just put on, leave 20 minutes, scrub. If it's bad, put it on again, another 20 minutes, scrub, and then get a towel and dry it off. And 9 times out of 10, it'll look like new, but it won't bring back colours if they had faded, which I don't think they have in this case. I think that's your lack of appreciation.
Thank you. You love hanging me, don't you? Mixed views on the protests going on for a second day and indeed confirmed for a third. Joe wonders, why are the protesters not out marching instead of wasting precious diesel? But a lot of support for them as well, with different people saying, well, we've already seen one concession on price. It's time we saw another. And the Hauliers Association has confirmed there will be some breakthrough by the end of the week based on their current negotiations with government. But that is, of course, for hauliers as opposed to maybe farmers, farm contractors, and the general public too. Because despite events yesterday and the ceasefire agreed, it will be some time before the barrel of crude oil and the fall in price is felt at the petrol pumps. It's coming up on 10:30. More from Brian next.
Mr. Fix-It. Proudly supported by AquaBion Ireland, the limescale treatment solution. Visit aquabioниreland.ie today.
Brian Cloonan is with us until 11 o'clock this morning. So what would you like to ask him? 083 30 10 103. Text or WhatsApp, powered by Lamb Brothers Toyota in Tullamore. Benny is in the wider Furban area, he says. And I've been trying to get somebody to clean my roof without success. So I would like to know if there's somebody in the wider Furban area who would clean roofs. I live in a bungalow. It shouldn't be that big of a job. I'm just wondering, could he do it himself?
Yeah, look, it's hard to get. Make sure, we always just say if you're getting someone to clean your roof, well, particularly if they're getting on the roof, but even if they're inside the gate doing the job.
Get insurance
Get
proof.
insurance, particularly if it's something that has potential to be seriously, if you're someone weeding the garden, it's probably not it is essential, but it's not as essential because the potential for damage is less. Look, I see Dosco and Varian and people have, they have one of these, and you see them online, a 10-metre long brush. So it's a 10-metre long pole with a brush at the top that has 4 jets on it, and you connect it to the hose. That's nearly a pity.
A power hose or a regular hose?
To a regular hose.
Right.
It's a pity that I must see is there any way to connect them to a power hose. But that would be good.
Funny, Lidl last week had one of these big extendable nozzles. I think it was maybe 10 feet long.
Okay.
That you would attach to your power hose and help you reach the hard to reach places.
Right, but 10 feet.
I can't remember exactly how long.
Yeah,
it
no,
was
these
long
things,
enough to get up to, in my case, the solar panels.
Oh, it was long enough. Okay, all right. Yeah.
I know that's a sensation you're not familiar with, things being long enough.
To do the job.
But it worked.
Yeah, great. Because it is important to you to keep your solar panels clean because you do reduce the efficiency of them quite a lot.
More than you would think.
Yeah, like you think this film of dust is not enough, but, as someone who wears glasses, even a slight film on your glasses can really make such a difference. And the same thing applies. It does keep out so much light. So it's important to keep it clean, but it's important to clean it then with a brush that isn't going to scratch. So I think that's what the Varian and the Dosco ones were originally designed for, was cleaning solar panels. But nowadays people are using them for cleaning roofs as well. And the fact that the extension is 10 metres, 30 foot long. So that's quite a long distance. So you could take it on yourself from that point of view. Otherwise, maybe somebody will phone in and say, we'll do your roof, give you a price.
Martin in Balnagar moved into a new house just before Christmas, and there's a gate to the front that is really too good to dump at the moment,
okay,
but too bad to leave as it is. It's rusty, it's brown, some bits are flaking off. I want to paint it to tidy, but do I have to grind it all the way back to bare metal? Can I just maybe wire brush off the rough stuff and then paint over it?
Yeah, so look, I would say if you have a power wash it, because the pressure of a power washer is really good at taking off all the loose and flaking paint, all the loose and flaking rust. And if you haven't, by all means, use the wire brush. But so many people have a power washer that if you asked your neighbours, if you ask around, somebody will give you a loan of a power washer for an hour. And that's all it'll take. It won't even take an hour. You'll be as long setting up the power washer and running out the extension lead and running out the garden hose as you will be to actually do the job. But take off everything that's going to flake, whatever way you do it. And then the easiest thing to do is to get a rust remover preventer liquid, and you'll get that in hardware shops and paint shops or motor factories. And you brush that on, you leave it for a couple of hours, and then just hose it off with a garden hose. And now all the rust, all the brown rust will be gone. Will have changed colour. It will be neutralised, but then you need to paint it. So you probably, nowadays, most people, black is a very popular colour to paint gates, but it's a very practical colour in that it disguises everything. You'll definitely get away with 2 coats. And I would say just use an ordinary satin paint. What you could do is get a tin of a rust primer in a spray and just spray all the exposed rusty bits to be sure, and you'll do an exceptional job. And then use an oil-based satin paint, and because it's a satin, you don't need an undercoat. You will get away without using an undercoat, and just give it 2 coats. And in fine weather, it's quite therapeutic to be out brushing this on. Or if you want to buy tins of spray paint, you can use the spray. But the oil-based is better, and most of the spray paints tend to be water-based. And so putting a water-based paint on top of rust isn't the best thing, because it's more likely to become activated again, whereas the oil-based, particularly if you use a primer, will do a fantastic job on it.
So Katrina has 2 questions.
Okay.
Footpaths first, what is the best product to clean them? And secondly, is there an adhesive product available to stick a wooden panel that has come off a composite PVC sash window?
Oh, yeah. So we'll go with that first. Any of the really any glue will do. We often suggest to people that they should keep what's known as an epoxy, E-P-O-X-Y, a 2-pack glue in the house, because you can use it again and again and again, and it's crystal clear and it's easy to use, and it doesn't go off because it only goes off when you mix the two tubes together. So if you had one of those in the house, it would be ideal for that. Otherwise, you could use really any of the exterior, the Stick-Sol, the Tech 7, the Fix-All, crystal clear. Go for the crystal clear. Any of those glues will do fine. The question is going to be, does it stay in place of its own accord, or do you have to tape it on? And if you want to tape it on, make sure and use a tape that isn't going to pull off the paint, because you're going to leave the tape in place for a couple of hours. So either use masking tape or insulation tape is good. Silage tape is brilliant, and all of those are cheap and cheerful, but they'll keep the piece of timber in place. In terms of there's so many products for cleaning your drive of algae and moss. So where do you start? Mosco, Drive Clear, ActiWash. There's dozens and dozens of them. Sometimes you just need to look at I did an interesting one 4 years ago now. I bought 10 different moss killers, and 8 of the moss killers bought 10 different moss killers and then asked for the data sheet. So once you buy a chemical, they have to give you the data sheet. And 8 of the 10 had the same active ingredient. And in this particular active ingredient, I can't pronounce it now, I can't remember it, but it doesn't matter. But the highest out there in all these was 15%. The lowest was 8%. And as it happened, the highest, the 15% one, was also the cheapest one. Now, it was probably the least known brand. And then some of the really well-branded, well-advertised ones had a very low concentration rate. So just have a look and see how much does it make, how much per end product is it going to cost you. And you'll probably end up with the best one then.
When do we get to the interesting bit?
I know that went over your head. You should see the way his eyes glazed over when I start talking mixing rates.
No, trust me, you were talking money and value, and I understood that perfectly well. Joe says, for the man with the gate that needs some love, sandblast it.
Yeah, sandblasting would be brilliant. If obviously it's more expensive, but the sandblasting will leave a gate like new. And if it's an easy gate to remove, you could bring the gates to the people who sandblast, because obviously time is money. So, bringing his equipment to the gates will cost more than bringing the gates to him. And also don't forget that people who do monumental, as well as if you look up sandblasters, the people who do monumental work, headstones, they also can sandblast. And you can bring the gates, whoever's going to do the sandblasting, if you bring the gates to them, it'll be cheaper.
Shane is in Arles in South County Laois. He says, I decided to tidy up the garden edges at the weekend. Now it looks like I attacked them with a shovel in a bad mood. Is there a way to neaten the edges properly so it doesn't look like a crime scene?
This is the edges of the lawn, I'd imagine. Yeah, look, you can get a lawn edger. There's different ones. I tell you what, if you're using the traditional, so the traditional lawn edger was a half moon shaped thing that you push your foot down on it. Now you can buy a little electric or battery operated or motor operated edger that has a wheel like a circular saw, and you run that along. And the problem with that sometimes is that if it hits a stone, you're in trouble with the blade. So if you get one of those, make sure it's one that you can replace the blade on. But if you're using the traditional lawn edger, use one that has a good wide footrest. So a lot of them just have a wafer thin. So the part that goes into the ground is, say, 2 millimetres thick, and the bit you put your foot on is 2 millimetres thick, and then that gets very sore on your foot because you're pushing down on a very hard, thin edge. And the better ones then all have a wider turned back edge for your feet. And it's one of these things, again, it can be quite therapeutic. What you do is, if it's a straight line, you just run a bit of line, a bit of cord, a bit of builder's line from one to the other. So you stick in the ground at one end, stick in the ground at the other end, tie a cord, and now you have a nice clean line, and you can cut your line with your lawn edger, and you will feel very pleased at the end of it if you do that.
Still to come today, we investigate rising violence and aggression in our hospitals. Also, why farmers say fuel and fertiliser costs are pushing them to the brink. Teachers' pay, workload and school resources coming under the spotlight, and getting on your high Nelly for a good cause.
Mr. Fix-It. Proudly supported by AquaBion Ireland, the limescale treatment solution. Visit aquabioниreland.ie today.
Brian has a question for Brian.
Okay.
So what is the best product to kill moss on tarmac? Not grass, tarmac.
So very same as we said in the last one, there's just so many out there. So the thing, whether you're using, I don't know, Moscow, Mossbuster, Drive Clear, ActiWash, any of those, the big thing is the moss itself needs to be dry. You can, if you want, go out with a scraper or a brush and scrape off really heavy stuff and then spray it off afterwards. But the big thing is spray it off. Don't just spread spores. If you power wash, you spread spores all over the place and it comes back very quickly. And the other thing to remember always about power washing, concrete in particular, not so much tarmac. With concrete, if you power wash it, you do make it more porous. And we just said earlier that if you seal concrete, it will stay cleaner longer, both from dirt and from algae growth and moss growth. So every time you power wash it, you abrade it. It's like using sandpaper on it, and it does make it more porous and therefore more prone to having moss and algae in the future. Doesn't apply to tarmac, but does apply to concrete. But just look at the ones you're buying. How much does it make? How strong is the product? And then see which one you're going to use. But they will all achieve the same thing. But just if it's heavy moss, make sure either scrape off the worst of it and use a knapsack then to spray it on, or drench it. You have to drench the product if it's a heavy moss. And the moss has to be dry enough to accept it. So you could have a very wet day yesterday, lovely day today, but if there's not a bit of a breeze there, it won't have dried out and then it won't absorb the moss killer in the first place.
So Pauline is in Street in County Westmeath.
Street?
Yes.
Street.
E at the end.
And
Yes.
an E. Oh, I never heard of it.
And there's Street Parish Park, fabulous community facilities.
Wow.
It's an amazing place,
Great.
actually. Anyway, I digress. So she tried to fix a dripping tap herself because
good girl.
getting a plumber is nigh on impossible. But somehow she made it worse. And she says it is now dripping faster and louder, as if it's mocking me. So is there an easy fix, or have I gone past the point of rescue?
I suppose it really depends what you did. So there is inside the tap. So you turn off the water, whether it's the hot water or the cold water, you turn off the water and take the top, as a rule, you take the top of the tap off. There's a little grub screw. The grub screw can be in under the hot and cold. It can be a screw that's in under, you flick up where it says hot or cold, or it could be at the side. And then inside there is what's known as a little jumper with a washer on it. Now, sometimes you can replace the entire jumper, or sometimes you can just replace the washer. But what you also need to do is shine a torch in, and if it's a very old tap, sometimes what can happen is, so the washer closes down. It creates a seal. It's like a gasket closing down to stop the water coming out. So that's, this thing moves up, allows the water to flow through a channel, closes down and stops the water from coming out. But if there's been a drip there for a long, long, long time, it kind of worn a groove in that flat bit at the bottom. Now, that would be unusual, but if that was the case, you would need to buy what's known as a tap reseating tool. Not big money, but that's what you'd have to do. But I would say just replace the entire jumper might be the way to do it. So you take it out, go to your local plumbing supply shop, they'll sell you a new one, and that's probably the easiest way to do it.
I think there's a course waiting to be developed in basic home DIY.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because these jobs are too small for many plumbers to deal with now.
And so hard now to get plumbers and electricians. And you see, in fairness to those guys, if you can go out to someone's house to do that job and it's a 5-minute job, what do you charge? Because you've had to drive 20 minutes to get there and you have to drive another 20 minutes to the next job, and you were, 15 minutes there. There's an hour gone.
But you still have to bring all your tools as well.
Absolutely. And it just looks, so they get no thanks for it, really. They just get, oh my God, he's have to charge me X. He was only here 5 minutes and it cost X. And that can be part of the perception as well.
Maybe men's sheds groups?
Could do courses, yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Mary in Mullingar has a farmhouse dining room chair, and a set of them actually, which needs restoration. Do you know, or does anybody listening know, where in the Midlands French polishing is carried out?
The only one I know of that comes to mind straight away is a guy called Andrew Whittaker, but anybody else out there listening might phone us in, because that is such an invaluable service, and probably less and less people doing it. So it'd be great to hear names of people who are doing it, unless, of course, you want to take it on herself. And, of course, you mentioned classes. I mean, every year we would get people into us who are buying methylated. You know from the list, they take out a list, and I want 4-0 steel wool, and I want methylated spirits, and I want a bottle of turpentine, and I want a bottle of French polish, and you know straight away they're doing a night class in French polishing. So, I mean, if time is on your hands and if you're really struggling to get someone, maybe look at doing the course and taking it on yourself.
Okay, next question. Sean in Mount Mellick has a wheelie bin that smells like something has died inside and possibly came back to life. Is there a proper way to clean it?
Look, when it's empty, just put in, every now and again I do it at home, I just put some bleach in, and then I put a kettle full of hot water in, and I sluice it all around, and I just leave it for a couple of hours, and then I pour it down the drain. And ordinary household bleach, bit of boiling water, and just keep swirling it around. And if it's a bin where there's stuff built up at the bottom, I use a garden hoe to kind of move all that stuff around. And sometimes you get a build up. Now, I'm not saying in the compost bin, you wouldn't use bleach in the compost bin because you don't want to kill the bacteria that's there. But if there's a build up there, just use a yard brush, a garden hose, what I use, breaks it all up, leave it for a few hours, and then pour it down the drain, and it'll all be fine. It'll smell gorgeous.
Angela says her husband, you know he's in trouble now, don't you?
My husband, is it?
So Angela says her husband painted a room over the weekend, and it looked great.
Great.
Until it dried.
Okay.
Now you can see roller marks everywhere. Does the job have to be repeated, or is there a way to disguise?
Yeah, look, it sounds as though it would probably a change of colour, and one coat wasn't enough to do it. Now, he may have used an exterior roller, which would be a deep pile roller, on it, and that'll leave a heavier texture. So go for a very fine roller. Not quite mohair, but a smooth roller. So,
sorry, can you give us a quick crash course? I always thought rollers were rollers.
No. So if you were going to paint a door, you would use either a mohair, which is really, really fine, so it still feels a bit woolly, if you know what I mean, but really fine, or you'd use a sponge. So if you were recoating the door with the same colour, then you'd use a sponge. If you were changing the colour and you wanted to put on a heavier coat of paint but still get a really fine finish, you'd use mohair. And then on interior walls, you'd use either fine pile or medium pile. Again, depending on if you were going same coat, if you're just freshening up the same colour, the fine pile will put on enough paint. The medium pile will put on more, but you'd never use a deep pile on an internal wall, because a deep pile is used outside on napped finish. So the way a lot of surfaces outside will be coarser, the napped finish would be this slightly sandpapery type of finish, and then you'd have dashing, which of course a roller probably won't be enough in the first place. So it sounds as though he may have used either a deep pile or a heavy medium pile. So just give it a second coat. Now what I would say is, for the sake of 5 minutes, get some super fine sandpaper. If you put it this way, if you can run your fingernails down the wall and you can feel the difference in those lines, well then when you paint over it, you'll still see them. So if that was the case, what you would do is get some 320 grade Lubrisil. It's a grey, super fine paper, and just 5 minutes, rub it down the walls anywhere it's really bad. But as I say, the rule of thumb, if you feel it. So it's like when we say to people, if you had paint, say on a door, and the dog has scratched the door, and you can see the brown under the white paint. Well, if you paint over that with 3 or 4 coats of paint, you'll still see the marks because you've painted everything equally. But so what you would do is get some fine sandpaper, sand it all down, and the rule of thumb is if you run your fingernails over it and you can't feel it, you don't feel yourself going from white to brown to white with with the tips of your fingernails. Then when you paint over it, there'll be no marks visible in afterwards. You'll still have to give it a few coats, but you won't see the marks afterwards. So the same thing would apply here.
Next listener gave their windows a big spring clean at the weekend. This is Linda in Portlaoise. But somehow the windows look worse now. There are streaks everywhere when the sun hits. What have I done wrong? Is there a trick I've missed?
Oh, so many people have different solutions, magic mixes that they make up with, vinegar or lemon juice or whatever. And the lemon juice is really good. The methylated spirits is really good. I know somebody who uses lemon juice and meth added to the water, and it seemingly does a great job. And equally well, you can buy squeegee off and all sorts of things that you can add to the water that are really good. The squeegee off is the best one I've come across. I forget who makes it. But I had a guy in recently, and let's just say he works as a maintenance man in a club, a sporting club. And
that's very cryptic.
Yeah, well,
I thought you were going to say strip club.
He works at a golf club, and there's a lot of glass in the the main area of the golf club. And of course, if there's the slightest mark on it, you can see it. And of course, when you are working for a golf club last night, every member is technically an owner of the golf club.
Right.
So every member can feel justified in saying, those windows could do with a clean. So he was in recently just saying he used the squeegee off, and he said the difference it has made. But you can imagine the scene now. Everybody feels, I don't know what it is to be a member of a golf club, but if it's, I don't know,
whatever it is, share.
Well, and justifiably they feel, oh yeah, I own a little bit of this. So everybody's a critic if you're a member of a club, be it golf or pitch and putt or whatever it is. You're paying a substantial fee to be a member. Or otherwise, as I say, the mets, the lemon juice, and the big secret is wash the window and then use a rubber squeegee to take it off afterwards. But sometimes putting in washing up liquid and things like that can leave smears. You probably wash the PVC or the timber or whatever really well, but washing up liquid on its own or washing up liquid can leave a smear that really catches the sun afterwards.
Brian, our time is up, I'm afraid.
All right, Will.
But we will chat again soon.
Great, look forward to it.
If you want to pick his brain, you'll find him at Cloonan's Hardware in Tullamore. Now, after the news at 11 with David Hollywood, he investigates rising violence and aggression in our hospitals. Also, teachers' pay, workload and school resources coming under the spotlight at the teachers' conferences. And getting on your high Nelly for a great cause. That's on the way after these.